Hello, everyone. Welcome to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network and newsstreamingnetwork.com, home of Going Solo Media and Going Bold Media. Those of you that don't know, WGSN-DB Going Solo Network is our radio station, and we started out in radio years ago. We've got a lot of listeners, and we want to do shout out to them. We want to thank them for being so loyal to us. We appreciate it. So if you guys don't know me, I am fondly called the Doyenne of Relationship Building. I am Cece Shatz. I'm a divorce, dating, and a life coach connecting singles throughout the Going Solo Network. My website is goingsolonetwork.com. And we have got a wonderful show here for you on the Date the Right One. Date the Right One, we focus on dating, we focus on relationships, and we're going to have a lot of fun today's show because we have a wonderful author with us. I'm going to bring him forward. We have Stephen Edwards. Let's bring him forward. Stephen.
Hi, Cece. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Oh, it is great having you. You are the founder of VFT23 Publishing LLC. You're also an author, wonderful writer, and an international speaker. And we're just really, really excited to talk to you about the book that you have written. And let's make sure we just tell everybody straight up front. The book is called The Venus Flytrap: Sex, Lives, Repercussions, and a Seductive Memoir of Obsession, Madness, and Mayhem in Love. You can buy this on Amazon. So I'm telling you, it's based on true life. And yeah, you want to get that on Amazon. Get it right away. It'll be a good read, especially, in this season here where a lot of people are locked down in their homes. It's a great book to read. So tell us, Stephen, about yourself and why you decided to write. Now, I know you've written some other business books, right? So I realize that, and we'll talk about that too. But why did you write The Venus Flytrap?
Wow, that's a great question. Well, as it says, it's a memoir. It's a true story of what happened to me, and it's an amazing story. So I wanted to share it with people, but it became more than I ever imagined. I've always been in relationships, usually going from one to another, running away from myself most of my life. When I was a kid, like many people, I had a pretty traumatic childhood, and I always wanted to get out of the house and run away from home. And I ran away from home a few times. Anyway, but I continued that for my life, running. But it wasn't, home is me. I'm my home. So I was running away from myself, right? I didn't realize that until much later. And I was all over the place. I mean, I lived in just about every town and city in the UK where I'm from. And then in America, I've lived in 48 of the 50 states. So that's a lot of running. It gets exhausting. Wow. So I was, as I say in the book, I was, 4 times married, right? So, you know what the definition of insanity is, right? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting to get a different result. And people would say to me, well, what was wrong with all these women? And I'd say, well, let's do the math here. There were 4 marriages and there was only one constant through all 4 marriages, and that is me. So let's figure it out, right? So eventually I had to just say, look, enough. I got to stop. You were talking earlier, actually, when you were talking to Wendy, and she was mentioning clarity. You got to have clarity, right? And I didn't have clarity. I was all over the place. So eventually I said, look, I got to sit down and reflect on my life. And I've really wanted to write this story. Well, as you know, the story is, there's a lot of eroticism in it, right? Because it's a very powerful story of me, successful businessman at the time, making a lot of money, living in a mansion with a sex room and an former international supermodel in this crazy relationship. Well, who's going to want to be with a guy writing about that and then going out and promoting you, right? So I said, I guess I got to not be in a relationship for a while. Mm-hmm. So I wrote this book, and I just decided that I wasn't going to be in a relationship for a while, and that's 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. So I wrote the book anyway. I thought it was going to be 1 book, and it turned into 3, right? So the second one is coming out soon. And it's just been an extraordinary, cathartic experience for me to write the book. And it's ended up having depth that I didn't realize it would have when I first started to write it. And so what I've recognized is that it's an amazing story. And the best way for people to come to their own awareness is through stories, right?
Right.
Because teachers tell stories. And so if people have read the book, they've been saying, oh, I see myself here, and that helped me understand this. And now I see that. And now I know I don't need to be afraid. I don't need to have shame about this part of myself, about my sexual preferences or these kind of things. And also that, we can all be in a toxic relationship. Anybody can be in a toxic relationship. Most people say they've been in one at some time, right? And, sometimes it's not a bad thing. I know it sounds crazy, but sometimes we just need to go through something to wake us up, to make us more self. Do you know what I mean? And that's one of the things I learned about it. Like we were saying earlier, that sometimes the worst of times are the best times when you learn the most, right? And I think you believe this too, that nothing happens to us, everything happens for us. There's a reason somewhere if you're prepared to look at yourself, right? Now, I'm not saying that I've always been prepared to do that. This just happened to be one occasion that I was, right? Because I realized that, if you don't look at yourself, you're just destined to create the same thing over and over again, which I became really good at. And it wasn't until I said, okay, where's my part in this? How do I take ownership? How do I take responsibility? And sometimes, everybody around me said, look, Stephen, you shouldn't even be in the same state as this woman, let alone the same room, right? I say, look, but and this is what can happen. It was a toxic relationship from both sides, right? But I would say, look, and I've heard this said, you've heard it said yourself, right? When someone's in a toxic relationship, you can't tell them, right? You cannot tell them. But the easiest comeback line is, well, you don't understand. You don't know them, right? Like I know them, or whatever. So, but there's nothing wrong with advising people that they're in a toxic relationship or they shouldn't be in a relationship. But that it ends there. And then you've got to let them make their own choices, right? Because sometimes you see them going back and people get frustrated. Well, don't ever call me again, all those kind of things. But they're going through something they need to go through. And when enough is enough, they'll walk away. But not until, you know what I mean?
I like what you say about, writing things down, because I think, we encourage everyone to journal. Yeah. Because, if you journal every day, you'll start putting some of these, things that are happening to you, you're putting down on paper, and you'll start to see that maybe there's a pattern within that. And then you can also recognize what part did you play in whatever it is that that you're seeing that's going on, because we can't control someone else's behavior. We only can control our own, right? We can only control how we feel. And so by journaling, putting it down on paper, you start to see, what's happening around you, and can you change that? And so we had talked, in our show notes, we had said that we're going to have a conversation and explore the fine line between a healthy love and an unhealthy attachment. And I think that's what we're talking about here today. We're talking about, healthy love versus an unhealthy attachment. When we start learning that we're in a toxic relationship, and are we the one being toxic? And I found this, and I'll share it with you, Stephen. I found a relationship that I was in one time that it's like the guy was like pushing my buttons, and it was just like, and I remember talking to my reverend about it, my pastor about it. And he said to me, sometimes, even though there's two wonderful people, sometimes they just don't mesh in a relationship. Yeah. And I realized that I didn't understand what the heck he's talking about. I'm thinking like, I'm trying to make this work, And then I realized he's absolutely right, that there were things within the essence of that individual that was pushing me to the brink. And so it became toxic for me. And so, I don't think we realize that until we truly, maybe write it down, talk to someone. And what I love so much about maybe reading your book is that you've experienced some of these things. So when we hear shows and we read books and we open ourselves up to other avenues of information, we start seeing whether that resonates with us. I mean, is that something like, oh yeah, hey man, that happened to me. Oh, I felt that way too sometimes. And so that's the beauty of being an author, I think, for you, is to share with the world something that can really help another person along. So yeah, kudos to you for taking the time to dig deep, and then write this down so that other people can see it and understand it, and maybe even resonate with it, and then get their lives in order, and start controlling their lives down to a path that they consider. So thank you for that.
Well, that's very kind of you. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, it's not a book. It's not a how-to book, that's for sure.
Maybe
how not to, exactly right. But people will see the signs and the red flags, and they go, "Couldn't you see that? What is wrong with you?" Right? But you mentioned journaling, and I've pretty much always journaled. I used to work with Tony Robbins, right? So big journaling. So I used to write these journals, but I never read them, which is not the point, right? So when I go back and I read the journals that I journaled all through this relationship, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm sure you've seen the movie The Shining, right? With Jack Nicholson.
Yeah.
Right. And he's writing in the journal, and nobody knows what he's writing. Right. And then at one point, his wife finds the journal and opens it. And he's saying the same thing over and over again, and writing out the same thing. And I realized that's what I was doing. Right. I was saying the same thing. I would say this, I got to realize this and this and this. And then in the journal, I took myself back out of it again and go back again. So into context, because, you said something earlier that's really important. And you said, I hope this isn't women bashing. And I said, no, I mean, I love this woman. I still love her to this day with all my heart. But what actually broke us apart and what caused a lot of the madness and mayhem is that we're both crazy. We were actually, literally, we were both, I was put into an asylum at 16 because I was diagnosed as being manic depressive, which is what it was back then in England. Now we call it bipolar, right? So I had an incredible high, and I was going crazy, right? They had to lock me up. So, one night I was driving 100 miles an hour on the wrong side of a bridge. Anyway, I'm not going to get into all that stuff. But anyway, and then she was also locked up at 16 years of age into an asylum. Her father put her in an asylum. So we were both irresponsible. We were both just addicted to excitement, adventure. And we both had mental illness. So we were perfect for each other, perfect match. And I say this throughout the book, we were mirrors of each other, right? So now, we were both pretty extreme, but I would say she was more extreme than me. So my disorder was being bipolar. Her disorder was borderline personality disorder, which is basically everything wrapped into one. And I didn't know that. I had no idea, right? So someone with that disease, and it is a disease, you can go from loving someone at 10 o'clock in the morning to hating them at 11 o'clock, and no middle ground. Everything is black and white, right? So, and that same thing happens in the personality. You're just going on this roller coaster, right? Which is exciting, but also can be devastating, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So her father was a billionaire, right? So she was spoiled growing up, right? What are you going to do, right? So she was a brat, right? But I loved that about her. I didn't care, right? She was authentic. She was who she was. She didn't care about anything or anybody. She didn't care about money, because she knew she could always get a wealthy guy to come in and take care of her, and she could do whatever she wanted with him and eventually take everything he had, which is her MO. Because her father put her in an asylum when she was 16, she hated men with a vengeance, right? Because if your father doesn't love you, who's going to love you?
Right.
She grows up 5'11" in her bare feet, absolutely stunning. I mean, you look at it, you want to cry, right? She was so beautiful. But that doesn't make it easy for her, right? Because now men are over her all the time, like flies, right? Venus flytrap,
right?
And but she didn't feel that they liked her because she didn't feel lovable. You couldn't love me if you knew who I am, right?
Right.
And so with these men, she would push them away, use them, abuse them like she had been abused, right? And want to lure them into the Venus flytrap and then take everything they had and then move on. So this is the way she survived in the world, right? So her original intention with me was not to have a long-lasting, loving relationship, get a family, settle down, have kids. her MO was, I'm going to get his house off him and everything he has, and there's going to be nothing he can do. And she almost did it a few times. So, and there was crazy adventures as to how I'd finally escape and get away. But the point is, in the end, because I didn't leave her, I mean, we broke up, right? But she always knew she could get me back, right? She always knew she could get me back. I'd always feigned, well, I don't think I could be with you again. How could I trust you again? And she just like smooth talked me back in and know she could get me back. So over time, you started to, maybe this guy does care about me. Maybe he really does love me. Maybe I am lovable, right? And so she went from trying to take everything I had to wanting to marry me. Now, that could have been another way to take everything I had as well, but maybe she had a different strategy. But, but we started to have, you know, there were crazy times when she did crazy stuff, but there were also amazing times, incredible, you know, ups and downs, highs and lows, you know, and the highs were super high because I was in a position to be able to do things, you know, from a financial standpoint, and also because I travel a lot, we were able to go all over and we lived a fairy tale life. We had a beautiful home when we were home, and we would stay in nice hotels when I traveled, but it wasn't real. It's not a real life, right? And so I knew that if we ever, you know, she wanted to marry me for whatever reason, but I knew that would be the end of the relationship if we did get married, because there wouldn't be the tension, there wouldn't be the excitement, there wouldn't be the fantasy. It would become normalized, and neither of us that wanted it. So I knew that I wouldn't
be working towards getting married anymore. What would she be working towards? Yeah.
Exactly. So winning the game. She was very competitive and she wanted to win that game. But when she'd won the game, it'd be over. Yeah. So in the end, I didn't find that out about her mental illness until we've been together nearly a year.
Yeah.
So you can imagine.
We get a lot, just to interject, we get a lot of that when we're dating, right? It's all about the chase.
Yeah.
And then when the person, you know, gets to where they mentally think they want to be, then that's it. They're done. So and so we hear that a lot within dating. So it's, you know, it's definitely, so I mean, I think that our audience can probably relate to what you're saying, because they've had dates like that. They understand the roller coaster ride up and down, and so things like that. So so I think our audience on Date the Right One can certainly be there with you. Yeah.
Well, welcome aboard. But anyway, so
not the cruise we want to be on. But
no, it's the one you want to watch. You want to watch it, but you don't want to be in it. Yeah,
you don't want to be on that love boat. But I get it.
Definitely no. But you know, I nobody forced me to be there, right? I'm a big boy. I made my own choices. Like, she's a big girl. She made her own choices. But once I found that out, it was interesting. A friend of mine who's in the book a lot, his name is Jerry. We've been good friends for a long, long time. Anyway, so it was Christmas, right? So we met in April. So this is Christmas, after the April. And he bought me a gift for Christmas of a little bundle of books. And he knows I love psychology, right? So he bought me this little bundle of books on psychology. Now, one of the books was called I Hate You, Don't Leave Me, which is all about borderline personality disorder. I didn't even know what it was. I'd never even heard of it before, right? And I studied quite a lot about psychology. Quite a lot. I worked with Tony Robbins for 5 years, so we studied psychology. Anyway, I read this book, and it's her on paper. It's her story. Unbelievable. So I read it from cover to cover. And with borderline personality disorder, there are 9 symptoms. And if you have 5, you're a borderline. She had 9. She had all of them to an acute level, right? And it says in the book, borderline personality is treatable. Now, I read that as it was curable, right? And it isn't curable.
Yeah.
You know, now you can live with it. You can learn to come to terms with it as an individual, as a couple, through therapy.
Right.
But that's going to be intense therapy for both of you. And without that therapy, there's no hope. And of course, with her being locked up in an asylum when she was 16, she was terrified of therapists or, you know, ending up back there if someone diagnosed her with this, they might say, you know what I mean? So there was no way that she would go to therapy. No,
right.
not in a million years.
Yeah. I mean, back in those days, asylums and things were just awful. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So in the end, Cece, I didn't really, I felt like the decision was taken out of my hands. Mm-hmm. The disease took her away from me, really, that in the end, I was literally losing my sanity. I was going insane, right? And I had to look at my life and say, is this what I want for the rest of my life? I'm losing myself. All the things that I did prior to meeting Tomas were, I wasn't doing them anymore. Meditation, eating right, juicing, working out, all the things that made me who I am. I wasn't doing it anymore because she was pulling me in the direction she wanted to pull me. I never drank, but when we were together, I used to drink alcohol because it was a way for me to get into her world, right?
Right.
And so anyway, so I had to just say in the end, look, I got to let her go. I have to let her go. And that was extraordinarily difficult because I didn't really want to let her go. You know what I mean? I wanted the life that we were having to continue, but I realized it just couldn't. It was never going to be.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you have to leave, you have to live your own authentic self. And you weren't doing that. You were living in a life in a world that she kind of created that works for her, but doesn't necessarily work for you. And
And I've been in the personal development and spiritual development arena for a long time. Mm-hmm. And I wanted people to know that because it's like, well, if this guy knew as much as he did and he can screw it up that badly, then I don't feel bad about myself, right? So it can happen to anybody, right? Even though I knew all those things, I forgot them all because I was obsessed with her. She was my heroine, right? She was my addiction, my magnificent obsession. And I was prepared to give up everything for her, right? And I almost lost everything, to be in that relationship and live that lifestyle. Because obviously, I started to lose focus on my business. It wasn't being as effective, all those things. So everything, not just my own personal things like working out and doing my spiritual practice and all those kind of things, my whole world was falling apart. I mean, my house was a wreck.
Yeah, that's hard. That's hard. We're going to have to take a quick break. When we come back, let's talk about how you were able to, kind of turn your life around a little bit and start focusing on yourself. Because I think a lot of people that are out in the dating arena are, they're coming up to, people with red flags and things like this. And they might very well be into, stepping into relationships that may not be good for them, that they can't be their authentic self. And so let's talk a little bit more about how we can step back, focus on ourselves. So maybe the right one, will come along and we'll be able to be with them. So we're going to take a quick break, 30 seconds, guys. Stay with us. So when we come back, we're going to talk again about love, obsession, madness, and mayhem with Stephen Edwards, who is the author of a wonderful book, and it's called The Venus Flytrap: Sex, Lives, Repercussions, and Seductive Memoir of Obsessions, Madness, Mayhem in Love. And it's on Amazon. So if you guys want to purchase a book, I highly recommend it. I think it'd be a very good read for you. And it's all true story, based on a true story of his life. So we want to definitely thank him for sharing with us here tonight. So you guys are listening to newstreamingnetwork.com, home of Going Solo and Going Bold, and our wonderful radio station, WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. I am Cece Shatz, your host, and we'll be right back, everyone. Hang tight. Well, welcome back, everyone, to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network, our radio station, and newsstreamingnetwork.com, which is our home of Going Solo Media and Going Bold Media. That's where we do all of our internet TV and podcasting and all of that. And this show is called Date the Right One. I am your host, Cece Shatz, tonight. I'm fondly called the Doyenne of Relationship Building, and it is a pleasure to be with you here. We have a wonderful author with us. We have Stephen Edwards. He is the founder of VFT23 Publishing LLC. He's the author, writer, and an international speaker. He has written some, business books and things like that, but he went out on a limb, I think, and he wrote down his life in The Venus Flytrap: Sex, Lives, and Repercussions, a seductive memoir of obsession, madness, mayhem in love. He talked about, the first part of the show, we talked about really the fine lines between healthy love and unhealthy attachment, really uncovering the emotional patterns that turn passion into obsession. And so I really feel like tonight we're really gaining insight and awareness on practical guidance to recognize red flags, choose healthier relationships, and date with clarity and confidence. So the first part of the show, he talked about his life, how it kind of went on a roller coaster life, fell madly in love with someone, and even though he loved them dearly, just was unhealthy, and could not be the person I think he truly wanted to be. And so he started to step out of that relationship. So tell us a little bit about that, how you decided to start focusing on yourself. And like you said, you stopped dating for a while. So tell us a little bit about how you started to recover who you really are as you're moving forward in life.
That's a great question. It's it's a process. I think what helped me more than anything, Cece, ironically, and I talked about the difficulty of writing this book, being in a relationship would never have worked, right? They would have left me anyway, writing all this. But once I started to write the book, and I'm very good at taking pictures of things in my mind or videos and things, so I could just recall it all, right? And I remember from the moment we met, we set a date, which is a very funny story too. But anyway, I was texting her because she had actually canceled on me once, and I can't let that happen again, right? So I really made these extravagant, preparations, right? Done all these crazy things, and I thought, one thing I need to do is I need to let her know I'm going to buy her some flowers, right? So it's going to even more solidify it, right? So I'm texting her backwards and forwards and said, hey, what's your favorite flower, right? And so she texted back, bird of paradise, right? And so I'm a jokester, right? I'm joking around all the time, drives people crazy. But anyway, so I texted her back and I said, nah, mine too. It's a bit expensive though. So what's your second favorite? I kid you not, Cece, it came back instantly. Venus Flytrap. And so that was the dichotomy. On the one hand, she was this beautiful bird of paradise. And on the other side was the Venus Flytrap. And the reason I'm sharing that is because, your biggest helper in all of these things is your intuition.
True.
And I knew, I didn't even know what a Venus flytrap was, but intuitively, it was a signal. I felt it. Whoa, that sounds ominous, right? And you have
intuition, right? You have intuition, and all of us have that, and we don't always listen to that.
Exactly.
So thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
And then we go on our first date, and we love playing backgammon, and I knew that already, so I took a backgammon set. And so I won the first two games, and she wasn't happy. So we said, I need to take a break. I said, okay. She said, I need to go and have a cigarette. I went, you've got to be joking me right now. Because I'm into health, and all these different things. And I get this. And she wasn't joking. Red flag number 2, right? And on it went. I'm going to tell you one more, and then you want to know how I was able to start rebuilding my life again. One more, and this is these red flags get bigger and bigger. And if you're not careful and you keep overlooking them, then you're going to face the consequences, right?
Absolutely.
So I realized she was an alcoholic. I found a bottle of Captain Morgan's rum in a cabinet in the guest bathroom. And I'd already been married to an alcoholic, right? So I knew the signs and I knew the situation. So anyway, I called my friend over because I said, I got to confront her about this, which is a stupid idea, right? But because, when he came over and I said, what should I do? He said, well, enjoy her for the weekend and then take her home at the end of the weekend. Advice. That's not the advice I wanted. What I wanted to figure out is how I could make it work, right?
Right.
So, and of course, I confronted her. And whenever you do that, you're just going to have a problem, right? She's just going to get worse and worse. And it did. It blew out of hand completely. So I called her father, right? Because she'd given me his number. He didn't know who the hell I was, right? So I called her father and I say, look, I told him who I was and he knew who I was. I said, listen, I'm dating your daughter. And I don't know if you know this or not. She's an alcoholic. And he goes, oh, yeah, I know. He said, but I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on her, putting her in rehabs, but she just checks in and she checks out. He said, let me ask you a question. Is she in your house? she was hiding somewhere. I know where she was, but I just said, yeah. He goes, get her out and don't let her back in again. I'm like, what? He said, listen, I won't even let her in my house anymore. She arrives and she's fine, princess, wonderful. 3 days later, she's a monster. I can't let her in a house. And by the way, this is what she does with men. Do not let her in your house because she will entice you into an argument and she'll want you to hit her so she can call the police, have a restraining order put on you, and you won't be able to get back in your house. And she will take it from you. And that was the plan. Now, you would think after that,
you'd run.
So, the police were around later on. I mean, it was a nightmare. She almost got me taken to jail. And she would have got the restraining order and it would have been over, right? But some miracles happened and it didn't happen. But she tried that numerous times. And you'd be thinking, you got to be crazy. Well, I just told you I'm crazy, right? I was crazy about her, right? And I kept thinking I'm going to turn it around, which we almost did. But anyway, just to show you that you've got to listen to your intuition. And if you don't, you're going to face the consequences. And maybe at some level, I was prepared to do that. Anyway, to go to your other question, which was, well, what did you do to turn your life back around? Well, I first of all had to separate myself from her, which wasn't easy. I had to block her on everything possible. And when you do that, there's a part of you going, well, maybe I should talk to her, or maybe it'd be okay if she did call me, right? So you got to be really like, I'm really got to be committed to this, right? You can't be half-hearted, like becoming, deciding you're not going to take heroin anymore. You can't like half do it. You have to really commit to that and make sure you don't put yourself in a position which would entice you or tempt you into going back to it. So I had to cut all those off. And then I could focus on me again and start going back to the things that I knew would get me grounded. For me, meditation, juicing, eating healthy, and living an authentic life. That's what you said earlier, which is very powerful. Authenticity is the key, right? Being who you really are, right? Not easy. It's easier said than done, right? But at least if you give yourself the chance to be in your own power without that addiction, because it was an addiction, pulling you away, that's what I had to do. And it's not an overnight thing. You know that, right? You can't say, well, one day I'm in love with her and I'm going to let her do everything she wants, and the next day I'm not. It's a process, Yeah. But you just have to put yourself in a place where you have the best chance, right? So even to this day, as you can imagine, writing this book, Cece, I'm reliving everything. And that time is a great healer, but it also makes you forget, right? You forget all the pain and the problems, and you really start looking at, oh, it was wonderful and we had a great time. So it was very, very tempting when I was writing this book, because I'd be laughing and crying and going through all these different things. And I got to say, maybe I should just call her and see how she's doing, or, and eventually I go, stop, you can't, because if you did that, you'd be right back in it again. So I think creating the environment that's going to support your healing is so important. And even to this day, just recently, ironically, she's found out I've written this book, right? So now she started to tentatively reach out, and I haven't taken the temptation, not because I don't want to, because I just know it's not going to go anywhere and it's not going to be a good thing in the same place. So I can never go back. I can never go back.
fly on the wall when she reads it, right?
Oh my God! Yeah, I know. Right? Oh yeah, she'll have her things to say about it. But she actually she posted on my Facebook, and she actually got the book. She's got the book. She had it up on her iPad or Kindle, right? And she got a cup of coffee next to it. And she wrote, the comment was, "This book is about me, WTF." Right? Oh my God. Yeah. So there's a part of me that would just love to see her again, to go and rekindle that. But there's the other part of me says that would be really bad.
Yeah, I think many of us have relationships like that were exciting and there was just off the charts, and but they were just so wrong for us, so wrong. And until we realize what, that we have to stop and say, whoa, wait a minute, this is not going to work for me, and then take the actions. And I like what you said, sometimes you had to kind of step away from it. And sometimes you just have to step away, get away, let things settle. And, but that doesn't mean that you won't meet the right one, or you won't date the right one again, so, it's just all about experiences and really understanding those experiences and how it works for you and how it doesn't work for you. So you don't go into that Venus flytrap again. So we don't want that to happen.
I've been close, Cece. I've been close. Yeah. But the good news is I didn't. I've met not some, but a couple of women that are very similar in the energy, the sexuality. And there's a pull. I don't even kind of explain it. It's just a pull that you feel, and it's not a good pull, right? It's not a good pull.
You're attracted to that. See, that's what it is. It's pattern. It's a pattern for you. And so when you realize that you're the same person all over again, just a different person, the same situation. So you've got to understand that maybe it's the excitement or whatever it is that's drawing you to that individual. The outcome is not going to be what you truly want it to be. So you have to step back again from it, and then start asking yourself, why is it that I crave that, whatever it is, that excitement or whatever that is? Why is it that I truly want that? Because it's not good for me. That it's not it's not going to work for me. Is there a way you can have that on the on the other side? I don't know.
Yeah, you don't find that with everybody, right?
Yeah.
There's a certain sexuality, a certain excitement, as you said. Someone who wants to have that. We had a freaking sex room. That was our hobby, right? It was like, so say you play golf? Yeah, no. What about tennis? No. Listen, you got a huge sex room with a former supermodel. What do you think my hobby was, right? So let me think. Golf, sex room. Let me go to the sex room. And then, so we had an amazing lifestyle. So we would spend 3 days. I'm not kidding you, 3 days in that sex room. Now you're going to go, well, how could you go for 3 days? Well, that's getting into another arena. But because I had a really bad experience when I was a kid, being teased about the size of my penis, right? I was the kid in the shower on the cold day, and I was the one that was picked up for that. And it was traumatic. So, but the silver lining for that was that I knew I had to figure out a way to please my partner, not because of the size of my dick. So I had to come up with other ways to do that, right? So I became very good at lovemaking. So, and that was more using things without using just one thing to please my partner. Anyway, so we would go for 3 days. Now, in between each session, we would play backgammon. So we had an interesting balance, right? So we had the sex, and then we would sit in by the pool, by a fire pit, playing backgammon, right? Now, we're both very competitive, so we were both trying to win, but we also spend many hours talking about every aspect of life.
Right.
And that was also a powerful connection because her father, who's a billionaire, was a genius. He was literally a genius. And so she got those genes. She was incredibly intelligent, right? And I would just sit and listen to her explain life and all these different things. And I was also attracted to that intelligence, right? And, you know, I'm not stupid. I mean, I'm reasonably intelligent. I wouldn't have had the IQ that she has, but we also like, I guess, what do you call that? You know, sex of the minds. It would be a polite way to say it, right?
Right.
So we had those stimulations, you know, and she was very raw. I mean, she didn't have any shame at all. I mean, she would talk about her sexual adventures. She was also bisexual, right? So she had the amazing gift of manipulation. You know, she could actually meet a guy and have him do anything she wanted literally in a couple of minutes. And women, it was extraordinary to see. So she was tremendously powerful, intelligent, sexy, beautiful. That's a powerful concoction, right?
Yeah. So this book is really a good read. So everyone, we're gonna have to close the show, and we've already gone 40 minutes. So we're gonna have to close the show. But unfortunately, I hate to do that because this is a fun conversation. So we have with us, our guest today is Stephen Edwards. He's the founder of VFT23 Publishing LLC. He's the author, writer, and international speaker. We're talking about his book here, The Venus Flytrap: Sex, Lies, Repercussions, and Sexual Memoirs of Obsession, Madness, Mayhem in Love. And so you guys can find it right on Amazon. Any last words you want to share with us before we close?
Thank you for having me on. I hope people found it interesting and got some value out of it. And hey, enjoy your journey. Find the right person. Read the book to make sure you don't get the wrong person.
Right. So we're all about dating the right one, right? So you want to think about that, whether this person is the right one for you or not. But you never know. As they always say, what is it? There's always a lid for every pot. So we'll see what happens with that. Okay, everyone, we got to close the show. You're listening to newstreamingnetwork.com, home of Going Solo Media, Going Bold Media, and our wonderful radio station, WGSN-DB, Going Solo Network. This show is called Date the Right One, and I hope you enjoyed it. I am Cece Shatz, your host. I have wonderful guests here tonight with me. We have Stephen Edwards, and again, we want to thank you so much, Stephen, for being with us today. We talked about love, obsessions, madness, and mayhem. So with Stephen Edwards, a wonderful author, you guys run out and get the Venus Flytrap, and you can find it on Amazon. Everyone, we got to rush out. Bye.